Dorothy Thompson speaking to you today from the warehouse, designed by Lloyd Wright. And we have something right here in Richland Center that attracts people from all over the world. We'll take a look at that next. Very recently, a group of people came all the way from Australia to visit the AD German warehouse, and we'll take a look at their visit.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. Well, from Australia.
Yeah. You must be Stuart.
Yeah, I'm very honored to meet you.
Good to meet you also.
This is wonderful. I've never seen this. This is all very exciting.
Welcome to the Food Farm. So everybody,
Thank you.
I guess the next round is to just let you lead everybody up to the meeting, okay?
Yeah, you tell us the whole story and you lead away.
Follow me. Have to watch out for stragglers.
No, don't worry about that. That's it.
I'll be living.
No.
Oh, no.
Got my best side. We're up for that.
I'm underneath the side. Like that.
Okay, go get your wife.
Oh. Anybody else want to come in and
Come on, we're just a picnic. I love the music.
We're hoping to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hi, Dorothy. Thank you. Sure.
Just join me.
Not low. Not cutting anybody off.
Okay.
No, we don't. Come on.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you. Thanks, Dorothy.
One of them will probably turn out.
Yeah.
The one with the most eyes open.
Ben, do you want us to keep moving?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, let's go.
Somebody who's taken a lot of photos like me.
Oh, that's the way they say.
Yeah.
So where was she from? Thought you got it.
Yeah, we're a group mainly from Australia, a couple of New Zealanders, an American and Italian, and we're on a Lloyd Wright trail of exploration. So we started off on a tour, started in Chicago, been up to Racine, Madison, here to Spring Green and Richland Center, and then we're heading on to Buffalo and finishing Pittsburgh, looking at the major sites of Lloyd Wright's life and the UNESCO World Heritage listed sites.
I know in Racine you probably saw Johnson Wax.
Yeah.
What did you see in Chicago? Long ways?
Oh, Chicago. Well, Wright related, obviously, the home and studio. Good question. What else do we do in home and studio? Unity Temple, Then next we went out to Farnsworth House in Plano, Illinois. We then looked at some more of his prairie houses. So it's more the prairie stage of his life, that early period of his life, 1887 through to 1909.
Okay.
Dragged her back here.
And then from here you're going to go.
Yeah, so from here, so we've had the day, we've been at Taliesin, here at the AD German warehouse, and then we go back to Madison tonight, and we're flying to Buffalo tomorrow for the Darwin Martin house, which is that ultimate prairie house. Then we'll drive down through Erie and then on to Pittsburgh to go do Falling Water.
Did you all fly into O'Hare?
Yes, most of us did, yes.
Most of it.
Yeah.
Where
yeah,
from all over Australia?
Yes, bit us alive, mainly Sydney and Canberra, but we've got one Adelaide. Anyone from Melbourne? No, I don't think so. And then, as I said, a couple of New Zealanders. So but everyone met in Chicago to start the tour. It's a 2-week tour.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So the 2-week tour, it's run by Academy Travel, which is an Australian-based tour operator specialising in these special interest group tours. Small groups, there's only 13 of us, so it makes it a lot more personal, but focusing on whatever the main theme is. And of course, this one is Frank Lloyd Wright.
We're going to take, so they did one of their engineers over there, so that's how we got there.
We're going to split you up into 2 groups. And the first group, I'll take through the warehouse. And the second group will watch a video that kind of preps you for the whole tour. And then my group will come back and we'll watch the video. So just consider that a summation of the tour. There's a little bit of overlap between the tour and the film. I think you're going to enjoy both. I'd like to say thank you for coming. Welcome to what we call the Okooch Mountains. These hills in this area are the little beautiful small mountains of southwest Wisconsin. And the word Okooch is a Ho-Chunk Indian name meaning place to hunt fish. One of the things that this area is very well known for, especially with people from Chicago and Milwaukee and Madison and elsewhere, is the hundreds and hundreds of miles of some of the best trout streams in North America. So hence it was a place where the native peoples came to restock their supplies of fish, of meat. You're standing in the building that we call the 1912 warehouse. This is not Frank Lloyd Wright's project, but we incorporated it in with the warehouse to complement the warehouse. It's a good meeting place. We have events here. Some of you are walking through the back. In that area, we have wedding receptions and class reunions and business meetings. One of our biggest needs here is raising funds. The building itself, which half of you will go into in a few minutes, it was built and then stopped from construction in 1921. Started in 1917, ended in 1921. So part of it was done during the World War I period when the U.S. was in the war, and then afterwards, before the Roaring '20s and before the Great Depression. So that's the building of prime importance. I'll save most of my message until we're outside and in the building. Keep in mind that this is an ongoing construction project. We've had construction companies come through working with an architectural firm that specializes in historic renovation, but you'll see dust. There are balconies that don't look the sturdiest, so just as we're going up and down steps, be very careful. A couple of the floors, I'll give you as much information as I can, but they are inaccessible because of that construction part of the property. So that to begin with, why don't I tell them a bit about the Conservancy and get everybody at one time.
Sure.
Tim and I are both on the board of directors of the AD German Conservancy, Warehouse Conservancy Board of Directors. It's a nonprofit foundation. It was formed in 2014. This building, that building, I'll point out again when we're there, was never completely finished. I'll explain why when we're over there, and you'll see some of the aspects of why it wasn't finished. From 1921 until 1974, it sat basically empty. It was used as a speakeasy for a while. Do you know that term, speakeasy?
Yeah.
Illicit purveyor of liquid refreshments during what we call the Prohibition period. It was used as a bomb shelter during the Cold War when that started, when the Russia sphere was there. Somehow seems a long time ago. So when we were cleaning out decades of refuse, much of it left by the army of pigeons, we found bundles of body bags in the warehouse. Put there because that building was designated as the community fallout shelter. So it had, and then various owners had it, used it as warehouse properties. The last owner, a man from Minneapolis, who was a Frank Lloyd Wright nut, lived in a house in Minneapolis designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, moved here and moved his business here, and his business partner, Beth Ann Calkins, came from Minneapolis, which is the city as far in that direction as Chicago is in that direction. So they made a major move. And they had dreams of building this into a business. He was a retired business owner. It didn't work out. And he went to a different community and locked that building up, and it sat there for, 30 years, empty, unused. And then he passed away. And after he died, his son was settling the estate and wanted to continue his father's dream and was looking for a buyer. Now imagine this, a building that at that time was 70, 75 years old, ill repair. Frank Lloyd Wright, for various reasons, I'll get into that a little bit later too as we go through the tour, was not thought the greatest of by many of the local families. Lifestyle habits and money habits. Nobody wanted to touch it. So what's going to happen? Somebody comes in and bulldozes it out. You'll see when we're in the building, that would have been a monumental task to destroy that building. Somebody else could have come in and just bought it cheap, turned it into a kind of a throwaway junk warehouse, and the dream would have been lost. A couple from a community about 30 miles northwest of here, Viola, Wisconsin, the husband owned a bank, which gave him a bit of resources. And he and his wife had retired, Glenn and Mary Schnott, and they bought the building from the estate, bought it cheap, $25,000, which sounds like almost nothing. And they donated it to a group that had hastily started forming. Now, the term 501c3, I don't know an Australian term that coincides with that.
No.
But those kinds of organizations are not taxed. They have to prove that they're fulfilling a public purpose. It takes a while to get one formed. Our group was formed in 10 days. An attorney pushed it through the regulations, and the attorney, guess what, was on the national board of the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation.
Okay.
And then he gave the building to our group. And since that time, it's been our job to renovate, use architects. We've had one or two construction companies, one out of Madison that specializes in renovations. But it's been a long, slow process. We initiated the project telling people it would take $4.1 million to finish. We're way past that with inflation and things that we uncover, and it's well above $5 million now. So we do appreciate your donations today. With that, we've got to split into two groups. Should I just count, or you count and keep couples together? I don't know who's who.
Go on, Rod. Yeah. Go. There you go. That's a nice looking group. That's the A team. You take the A team, that's the A team there.
Oh, okay, okay. Which group wants to stay for the movie then? That group?
No, we'll stay for the movie. If that's all right.
Okay,
You
you
take-
about 6 or 7 for each group.
Yeah, there's 6 on that one. That's the A team. B team's got 7.
Okay, and you're
Yeah.
going to watch the movie?
Yeah, we'll
And
watch
you're
the
gonna come
movie.
with me?
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Again,
Come on,
watch your
B team.
steps.
So do I get the A team or the B team?
Hey, just what? Just what does it? We just.
This, of course, is the warehouse. It's the only warehouse ever designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Were you told where Frank Lloyd Wright was born?
Yeah, we've been there. Down, oh, it's not Free Range?
Nope.
Okay.
Right here in
Must
Richland Center.
Oh, wow.
This is his hometown.
This is where, how long did he spend here?
Well, he was, until he left for university,
Really?
he didn't stay at university very long. He was one of these individuals who was very impatient and moved on rapidly. And then he went on to Chicago, I believe, but then came back later. In 1911, he built the Taliesin School, 11 or 12. And later this developed. The only warehouse in the world built by Frank Lloyd Wright in his hometown. So I think you can appreciate how important it is to this community, to a lot of people, to preserve this building. I always ask a question when I begin my tours, and I'll ask it now. Please don't answer it, just think about it as we're walking through the building. And I'll ask it again when we're done. The question is, did Frank Lloyd Wright really design this building as just a warehouse? Think about it, we'll talk about it later. Notice the brickwork, the red glazed bricks. Every fourth brick is perpendicular to the row of bricks. It ties the inside wall, and you'll see that those are yellow bricks. So it's for strength. The walls are 1 foot thick, which I know you use centimeters, that would be, what, about 30 centimeters. It also is designed to pull cold air into the warehouse area. This was designed as a cold climate or a cold temperature warehouse. You'll see up at the top of every corner are the kinds of gargoyle-looking things that you would see on the corners of cathedrals in Europe. And probably most of you have been to Europe, that you see old cathedrals that have those. They were designed to actually hold gas lights, long-stemmed gas lights. That never happened because the building was turned down before it was closed down before it was finished construction.
So is that the concrete base floor?
That's the base of the building.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, in this climate, construction has to have what's called frost walls.
Right.
You don't have those, not even up in the snowy mountains, I would guess. But here they have to have it, otherwise freezing will heave a building. This building doesn't have that. What Frank Lloyd Wright did was he had the base of the building compacted and smooth, and then there's a base of cork under the building to take the impact of reverberations as the equipment was moved in and out and supplies and so forth. The building, well, I'll tell you more of this inside where it's a little bit cooler, but
Is this, oh, go ahead. You're going there.
yeah, this is the unloading dock, and it was designed to bring railroad cars in this far, unload into that part of the building, and then it would be the merchandise would be taken out by, at first, until 1924, it was with wagons and horses, and then after that, smaller trucks. Back in the days when there were no such thing as supermarkets, at just little small community grocery shops, taking out the supplies that people used in those days, like coal and
Flour and sugar.
flour, animal supplies, farm supplies, and that kind of thing.
And was it designed to be attached like this?
It was, but this, and this was also owned by A.D. German, who I'm going to tell you about once we get into the first floor. But then when this was separated out, there was a different owner for this building. And then later, this building, we had the option to buy it. And it just seemed like such a natural tie-in of the two. I know they look rough, obviously, but remember, this is in a very early stage of renovation. Okay, stop me anytime if you have questions. One other thing here I'll show you before we go up. You'll see these when you see the film too. But around the entire building except that side, but any side that faces sunlight, are these narrow from ground to roof windows. And they were designed to let in a minimal amount of light, but at the same time narrow enough that intruders and burglars couldn't get in. So, a rather ingenious idea, I think. The other thing, you'll see it a lot better on the other side, but notice at the top, around the entire building is that kind of a facade. And we call it the frieze. And it's very heavily influenced by, have any of you been to Central America, southern Mexico, Nicaragua, places like that, where there are ancient Mayan temples? Well, all of those temples and pyramids have something very similar to that around the top. And Frank Lloyd Wright really was interested in Central American architecture. And he incorporated this in what we call now his organic period, which went from 1911 to 1924. Okay, let's go inside where it's cool. In the early 1970s, an architect from Chicago bought this building, and he and his family moved to Richmond Center. And when his goal was to change this into a museum. And in the process, he put in all of the glass windows and the tiles and the brick wall here and the handicap access. And then over there are some cabinets that were used later by Harvey Glanzer and Beth Ann Calkins when they bought the building. Fortunately, I guess, because then we ended up with a building. It never was a viable commercial structure. But it's just a little bit of the history of the progress from what it was until now. So this was all open. Those walls weren't here either. And the steps weren't here. This was the docking area. So that trucks or wagons could back up here and then unload or load, whatever the case might be, supplies. See, A.G. German, the German warehouse, it's named after Albert Dell German. And he was also a local person. His family immigrated in the mid-1800s from Wales. And he grew up on a farm about 8 miles in that direction. And as a young man, in the early part of the 20th century, started a business, had it rapidly growing, and he started his business in the building where we met first, in 1912, because it was built in 1912. He came to the point rapidly where he needed to expand. And this is the bit about Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright built the Taliesin in 1911. And he was coming this far over. Can you imagine? 25 miles, you made the trip in a comfortable bus. He would come over with a driver, of course, a wagon and horse to get supplies. I don't know why he came this far, but I have a good suspicion why. He ran up quite a bill. He did that in a lot of places. He was a visionary. He considered himself an artist, and he kind of looked down on the practicality of paying bills and things like that. Mr. German said to him one day, you know, we really have to get this bill settled. And maybe I've got a solution. I want you to design for me and supervise the construction of a new warehouse. And I want it to be really elaborate. So Frank Lloyd Wright got to work, and he designed this. It was in his organic period. And it was a time period where Mr. Wright was doing a lot of other things, including a building in this same style in Tokyo, Japan, and another building in Chicago. That was the Imperial Hotel, and then the Midway beer garden and hotel complex in Chicago. Again, in this, using the modern friezes around the top with brick and many of the same features as this building. So he wasn't here that much. The building in Tokyo is gone. The building in Chicago is gone. Of those three, this is the only one that's left. Another reason for protecting and developing this building. We'll go up to the top. Watch as we walk up. The light is okay, but it's not perfect.
So that would be cat dock all the way along?
Pardon me?
That was cat dock all the way along? So beautiful. So was that cat dock in the
With the docking area? Yes, it did go all the way down to the other end, yes. Yeah, so they could bring a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
The office was new, that's early 1970s. There's a small theater behind that wall that was built during the year of the American bicentennial, 1976.
Yeah.
That will be moved to the basement. We're going to open this up completely to have it as an event center for things like wedding receptions and high school class reunions and that kind of thing. The important thing here is, notice the pillars.
Yep.
Have any of you been to the Johnson Wax?
Yes.
These pillars were the precursor to those pillars. This was the first one that he used, and then developed them further, and that's where the concept came for the pillars in the Johnson Wax company. You'll see a bit of roughness in the back here. Those walls were bricked up after the construction stopped, because that was another loading dock back there. Notice that there are no walls or hallways or anything like that. Frank Lloyd Wright did not like walls or hallways. Everything open. These forms, patterns, and then on the frieze at the top, you saw the patterns. That was the first time in the United States that concrete was used in construction in a decorative way. So he was a pioneer of that as well. The pillars are 16 feet apart in every direction. When we get to the second floor, you'll see the same thing. But the pillars back there and on upper floors are not decorated like these. And these are all hand formed. There's some of the forms that were left. And I don't know if they were used up in the maze or down here. But there's an elevator in the corner. We're not allowed to use it. Our insurance agent will not allow us because it's not safe. We have one board member who's almost 90 years old, and he goes on it, uses it, but the rest of us won't.
Don't catch that on the phone.
So, but this area will change too. Everything will be out of here. There was a gift shop here. Now the gift shop is where we stood before, and you'll be seeing the film. So that's. Questions?
It's just that the front two are decorated, and these are quite plain.
Yes, I get that question a lot too. I don't know why they did those decorated, actually. Unless this was open to the public and this area maybe was kind of behind the scenes a little bit.
Well, this would have been what they saw when they first drove in.
Yes.
Not here.
Not back here, yeah. Yeah.
So these are more functional.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do now is go up to second floor. It's a little bit of a hike, but we'll be fine. We'll go slow.
Been doing a lot of hiking.
Okay. Follow me.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you'll come back next week and every week to see what's happening here in Richland Center.